Alright, welcome to part 6 of our game character. So in this lesson I would like to take all of the subtools that we created in our previous videos and export them out into Maya, so we can maybe combine the UVs into one UV sheet. But before I do that, the only other thing that I'm thinking would be really cool is to see what happens if maybe he gets like a little mask. Alright, let's see what that would even look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on the shift key and click on this eyeball here, which will hide all of the subtools except the layer that I'm currently on. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to press X, make sure your active symmetry is on, and I'm going to go to my standard brush, and holding down the X key, I'm going to, maybe that's a little too large. I'm going to kind of create the shape of the mask that I think would work for this guy. So something along these lines I think is pretty cool. And this is just kind of a last minute idea that I just had. Again, I'm not going off of any concept art. I'm just literally just kind of having fun and being creative. So feel free to add as many details as you want to your character as well. But let's just see what the mask would look like. So maybe something like this. I don't really need it to be going around the head. I don't think that's necessary. And if we wanted to, we can even maybe make it, let's make it so it goes a little bit over the nose. I'm trying to create something more custom than like a classic hero mask that you see. And maybe we can even hold on Control and Alt key and let's give him a couple air holes. Again, just trying to be a little more original. I think this is kind of cool. Let's go ahead and extract this. So next what I'm going to do is come down to extract, and I could dial up my smooth if I wanted to, and let's just extract it and see what that even looks like. I'm gonna come on the side. I kind of like it, and we can, you know, we can dump it at any moment, right? Because it's going to be a separate mesh. So I'm going to say accept, and again, as soon as I do, it's going to put it on its own separate layer. And let's go ahead and definitely re-dynamesh this guy. So I'm going to hold on Control and drag to get rid of the masking. And let's go ahead and do the same thing here. I'm going to hide this mask layer and just kind of delete the mask that is that we created to create the mask. I'm going to go to the mask layer, hold down the Shift key, and press the eyeball. I just want to take a look and see what that even looks like. I kind of like it. I'm going with it. So let's go ahead and re-dynamesh it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the polyframe on. Let's go to Geometry tab and click on Z Remesher. And I'm going to say Detect Edges and keep the groups. The reason I want to keep the groups is because each side is its own polygroup, which means we should be able to easily delete the inside polys that we are not going to be using. That's the reason I selected keep groups. Alright, and I'm just going to dial this down to like maybe a 1. And let's just see what happens. I'm going to do a Z remesh. Very cool. I think this is pretty amazing. Gotta love Z remesher. So maybe just for fun, let's do half and just see what that even looks like.
I like to break it, honestly, before I commit to one. So I want to see like a really poor, broken version, and then I can really appreciate the one before that. It's just kind of my own preference. So I'm gonna say half, and right now we are 2,000 points, 2,200. I'm gonna say Z remesh it again, and you can see that it's beginning to lose the shape, definitely for the air holes, but it did come down to 1,400, which still works, honestly. I'm gonna do Control Z and see what the difference is. Yeah, I do. I like this a little bit better. This is definitely not game ready, so you would have to optimize this quite a bit before this would be used. But maybe we can optimize it a little bit in Maya. So let's go ahead and go back to geometry. I mean subtools. I'm gonna hold on the shift and click on the eyeball. And this is the part that I was gonna show you guys. If you hold on Control Shift, you can now hide, right? You can click on the parts that you don't want. So I don't really want any of this. And now it's a little bit confusing. I do need to turn my double on. I can't figure out what's going on here. I'm going to do Control Shift and hide this. And I believe we do need everything else. So we'll have to clean the rest manually. So I'm going to do delete hidden. And go ahead and bring everything back. Let's turn off our polyframe. Take a look. All right, pretty cool. So let's go ahead and make sure you save your work. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to do Control S and do a save. Now I'm saving mine as a file save as project. This will create ginormous files. So just so you know, this file here is 1.5 or 1.6 gigabytes, which is huge. Now the reason I like to do file save is because then you can also export out all of the history that is included in each subtool. So each subtool has its own history, right? And if you wanted to save that, you do need to do file save as. If you want a smaller file size and you don't really care about the history, then you can of course do save as for the tool, and that's going to be much smaller. And maybe that's, you know, a little bit smarter. And this will also save your subdivision levels, which is nice, right? So most people usually use the tools versus like the file. All right, so our next step is going to be taking all the subtools and exporting them out to Maya. Now, I do want to point out that there is such a thing as GoZ, but honestly, for some strange reason, I have both the latest versions of ZBrush and Maya, but on my end, it's just simply not working. So if it doesn't work on you, if it does work on yours, you are welcome to just simply select each subtool individually, and just simply clicking GoZ should transfer your subtool right into Maya without any issues. But if you are like me, if you're having issues or you're not really sure how GoZ works, we can quickly, we don't have that many subtools, so we can just quickly manually transfer this over ourselves, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the first layer, and the only thing you need to do on each is that your multiple subdivision levels are not active. So you're on the lowest subdivision level, because obviously you want to export out the lowest topology for your game asset. You don't want the 13 million one. So just common sense, right? So you want to go to geometry, you want to turn down your subdivision level, and then you just want to simply export this out as OBJ, right? So go ahead and do that quickly. Let's export out each element, and
the only thing you need to do is make sure that also, like if I click on the hair, make sure the dynamic is off as well. Just to make sure that we again export out the lowest subdivision level of each element, right? Once you done that, make sure that you save your work, and let's go ahead and jump into Maya. So I'll meet you there. All right, so here I am in Maya. Once you import all of your subtools, you should, if you are following closely to what I'm doing, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you should have 7 subtools. And if you click on your body, one of the most important thing is that under poly modeling, if you go to your UV editor, is make sure that your UVs are intact, because that's one of the most important things during this process, right? You want to maintain the UVs that our base mesh initially had, right? That was the whole point of using this particular base mesh, right? So one of the things that I would like to do next is I would like to also, to this UV sheet of the body, I would like to add the remaining the other elements, right? Which is like the hair, the mask, the cape, and I guess we could put our cape on a separate layer. I mean, a separate UV sheet if we wanted to. Maybe the cape and the weapon, you know, maybe we'll make a weapon should be its own texture, and then the body and the hair and all that should be on this one. So I guess that would make sense. Let's do that. So what I would like to do is I'm going to now if you look at the cape, if it's anything like mine, right, you can see that it's clearly flipped. So to flip it the other way, what you want to do is go to mesh display and just do a reverse, and that will flip the faces facing the proper way. Now I do want to point out that I am going to leave this as a single plane and not do thickness, because in most modern game engines you could just turn on double-sided material on, and that will give you the look that you want. You could see both sides. And also keep in mind, if we're going to rig this and the cape is going to be, you know, flowing in the wind, dealing with double geometry for the cape is going to be really difficult, right? So this would make a lot more sense to not have double sides. And at the same time, if we assign a second material to our weapon and the cape, then we can make the cape double-sided, but the character does not need to be double-sided. So it does make sense. All right, so let's go ahead and click on our cape, and I'm going to simply hide it. Press H. I'm going to hide it, and in the outliner, you can see, if you don't have your outliner, you can click on this button here, show outliner, and I just kind of dragged mine inside the tool settings because I kind of like it being parked here and visible at all times. And if I don't want it, I can just double click on it and close it and then just open it up again. Just my own little setup here. And also if I hide something, I can see that it's hidden, right? Like the cape. And another thing we could do real quick is maybe let's go ahead and name these. So that's going to be a cape, the body, the hair. Now if we look at the hair, we can see what the UVs for the hair look like, and it honestly doesn't look really good. So let's take a look and see what's going on here. So this is the bottom, right? The bottoms of the hair, and then these are the tops. You can see all the tops are selected, and then this is essentially sort of like the middle. So depending on how we're going to paint this, this
could either work or not work. If this is going to be a solid color, something like this should work. If you wanted to paint beautiful, you know, hair strings, you would need to probably unwrap this. And we can decide if we want to do that or not. Let me think about this. One thing I see right away on mine is I would like to fix this little thing. I'm going to go to verts and just going to push this in. Maybe review your hair as well and just make sure that it's overlapping properly. If something looks strange, you can just grab a point and push it in. Pretty easy, right? So in this case, for example, this looks kind of strange. Now one really neat trick, if you select a vertex, you can use your arrow keys to press down or left or right, and that will actually jump to the vertex next to it. So it's a really cool little trick. If you want to, you can see I'm pressing up and down and left and right, and I can just kind of navigate the piece, right? You can also turn the X-ray on if you want to see a little more. In my case, it's super confusing. What I need to do is, let's go ahead and bring this up and move this out. There we go, that makes more sense. And I think everything else on my end looks good. Another thing we could do is, if you're not happy with any of the really sharp edges, you can double click on any one of these edges that you feel is way too low, and just simply under poly modeling, you could click on this button here called bevel and then adjust the fraction, right? So you can control manually kind of the flow of the hair. So like in this case, maybe this guy looks a bit too low. So I'm gonna click on bevel and maybe make that sharp 90-degree angle a little bit softer. At the same time, you know, I do want to keep it low poly, but maybe, you know, certain areas it's a bit too intense. So I'm kind of liking the flow of this at this point. Right, so another thing we could do is, if we wanted to, we could click on this and do UV automatic, and that's going to give us UVs that are better maybe than what we previously had. But I would not advise to do that. That's kind of probably not the best way of unwrapping the hair. Maybe there's only a few strands. Let's just quickly unwrap this really quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it, go to UV planar, and I'm going to project it from the side. And I know that the side is right here because I can see that that's X, right? So I'm going to click on X axes and just project from the side. Now what I can do is, let's close this and let's just quickly see if we can go to edges and just double click on each one of these edges while holding down the shift key. Just very quickly click on each one, just like that. So once you're done, you can come here and press cut and do, let's select all of these and do unfold. And then let's come down here and do unstack. And I believe this is a much better UV situation than the automatic UVs, right? Now, if you wanted to run, you know, if you want to create like a hair effect, one of the things you should do is take the time to maybe straighten these out and also make sure that they're all facing the same way. So for example, if I double click on it, press W and then press E,
I can kind of straighten them all, make sure they're all kind of flowing the same way. And the reason for that is because then in Substance Painter you can apply a material that makes it look like it's hair strands, right? And it's all flowing the same way. I hope that makes sense. This is specifically for texturing only. But if you're not going to do that, if you are just going to apply a solid color, maybe with a little highlights, then this is fine, right? So again, it depends what type of texturing you're looking to do. So in this case, I can click layout and just kind of pack them back in. And I'm trying to figure out if I want these to be part of the body texture, and I think I do, which means I'm going to press W and move them out of the way. And the reason I'm moving them out of the way is because I want this 0 to 1 grid to be empty for now, because when I click on my character, his UVs are in this space, right? So let's hold down Shift and click on the hair as well. Now you can see that the hair is kind of in the other grid. So what I'm gonna, I think, end up doing it is just making them smaller and putting them on the same sheet. And let's go ahead and unwrap this. So for the mask, I can click on Isolate, I can press F, and let's take a look and see if we can maybe unwrap it and maybe even optimize it a little bit. That I don't need this. Maybe I don't need these. And let's go ahead and unhide it and see what that looks like. Yeah, I really do. I do want to have that inner edge in there, but I don't need the other two. So this actually makes sense, right? Let's go ahead and isolate it again and see what else we can delete. I don't need all of these, and I don't need these and these. Let's press delete. I see some strangeness here. I don't want that. Alright, so it's important to kind of clean up your geometry as you unwrap it, because you could clearly see each piece. Another thing we could do is we can double click on this. Holding down the Control key, I can press delete, and I really don't need those extra polys in there as well. And the reason you want to hold down the Control key is because as you're deleting the edges, holding down the Control key will also delete all the verts, right? Because you don't want to delete the edges and then leave all the points, and that's going to be a big mess. So when you clean this up, make sure you also hold down the Control key. All right. If we wanted to, we could delete some of this geometry here. Maybe it's a little too dense. So I'm gonna select these and see if I can get rid of all of these edges here. Don't know what just happened. Let's try this again. I'm gonna hold on Control and press delete. And see if we can clean this up a little bit. Now, when I'm doing this, you can see that some of the faces are losing their quad, right? So like this one is now 5 points, but we can fix that by running a clean feature or a clean tool. So just take the time and see which edges you feel are not necessary to reduce the topology. So maybe all this. So this is already feeling a little bit more low poly to me. All right, so I think I'm happy with this. This is on my end, my mask is 824 polys. I think that's pretty good. If I go to mesh smooth and do soft edges, I can see what that looks like. Another thing we can do is do soft and hard edges if we want to do some of that. Just play around and see what makes sense, right? I do like this edge to be a hard edge, and this edge too. So you can manually control which edges are hard and which ones are soft. So you can get this nice sharp line there. Maybe even do the same thing on these. Maybe this could be a hard edge, so it's a little cleaner. But before we play with that, we should have actually went to mesh, cleanup, and let's go ahead and do a cleanup and do faces with more than 4 sides. And I'm also gonna leave on these settings as well. And then watch this guy here. So this guy here has 5 sides, right? If I say apply, you can see that that's been fixed. And yes, it created a try, but at this point the topology is perfect and it doesn't have any anything that's over 4 edges, which works in my opinion. All right, I'm actually really liking this. This is great. I think it looks great. Let's jump out of isolation mode and let's go ahead and unwrap this. So to unwrap it, I'm going to project it from the Z. So what I'm going to do is go to planar and then just do Z, apply. Let's go ahead and do unfold. I'm going to move it up. Again, I don't want it to be in this space yet. And next, I'm going to grab my hair on the side. And let's project that from the top and do unfold. And the reason it's not unfolding is because it has geometry on both sides. So we do need to clean this up. All right. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to isolate it. And let's go ahead and delete some of these edges inside. So make sure your symmetry is on. So my object X is on. And let's see if we can delete some of these polygons that are pressed against his face, right? Or the side of his head. So these are clearly not necessary, right? No one will actually see any of this geometry. And by deleting this, it will also allow us to unfold the geometry for our UVs. So we essentially are killing 2 birds with 1 stone, right? I am going to do the same thing on this bottom one. And because our active symmetry is on, you can see that we are doing the same thing on the other side at the same time, right? So holding down the shift key, I'm just selecting all of the extra polys and let's just quickly grab the ones that we don't need. We don't need this. And I'm not too certain about these because I don't know how it's folding onto his face. I think I want to make sure I don't delete something that is. Yeah, I feel like these you could start to see on the side. All right, I'm pretty satisfied with this. I'm gonna press delete. Let's go into object mode and let's go ahead and jump out of isolation. Just make sure that we didn't delete faces that are important, right? So make sure that when you're looking on a different angle of your character that you didn't delete something that is gonna leave a hole, right? So in my case, I think it's good. So I'm gonna click on this I'm going to go to Mesh Display and do a soft edge. And I'm gonna go to my UVs now, select all of these, and let's try unfold one more time. As you can see, it's unfolding. Now let's do unstack. And if we jump out of isolation mode, we can press, you can double click and press W. And these guys are the same, so maybe we should stack them on top of each other. To do that, I'm gonna go to flip, hold down the shift key to select both of them and do a stack. And let's do the same thing here. I'm gonna flip this, holding down the shift key, double click on this so they're both selected and do a stack. All right, very nice. I'm gonna select them both, press W and just move them out of the way. Go to object mode. And let's think about what else we got. So we got the teeth, which again, these came straight out of ZBrush, and you can see that someone spent a long time laying this out. So this is beautiful, and we can use this to our advantage, right? So let's go ahead and select all of these and move them out of the way. And let's go ahead and see what else we got. So we have the eyes. Let's look at the eyes. I'm gonna isolate the eyes, press F, and make sure that, yeah, it doesn't have back faces, which is good. All right, so I believe these are ready to go as well, right? So let's just make sure that they are unfolded. I don't know what this is. What is this? All right, so the pupil is separate. I actually don't think I like that. I'm gonna delete this, and this is kind of a low poly character. I don't think we need all this crazy detail. So let's delete the pupils, and I think I'm gonna also delete all of these faces here. I'm gonna turn on my Object X, make sure I work on both of them. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold down the Shift key and click period to grow my selection. And I'm gonna press delete. And I think this is gonna be my eye. So I'm gonna select all of this, go to select, convert selection to verts, and just do a merge. I think for what I'm doing, this seems like it makes more sense. Which means I can now select both of these and do unfold. All right, and let's check the UVs. So that looks really nice. Let's select them and move them out of the way. And technically, if you click on each one, you should see that all of your pieces should be sort of on their own little grid, right? And the reason for that is because now if I combine them all, you can see that there's a lot, right? But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna merge them all into one mesh, and click on this button here to clear the history. And I'm gonna call this my character, so I don't have a name for him, I'm just gonna say character. And the cool thing is now this is all one solid mesh, right? So as far as creating characters for games, this is what you want. You want one mesh to reduce the draw calls in the game engine, especially if this is a mobile game character, or even not. Either or. You don't want to have different pieces, because for each piece, each separate piece, there's going to be a different draw call, and over time, if you have a lot of characters in the game, that's going to slow down your
your processor, right? So this is a smart way of building game characters. You want to make sure that you have as much combined as possible. And we do have the cape still, so remember the cape and the weapon is going to be separate, but the character, the body of the character and the hair is going to, it should just be combined, and should probably all be on one UV, which honestly I'm not looking forward to, but let's go ahead and see if we can make this work. Alright, so I'm going to select this character, right click and do a assign. I'm going to assign a phone to this guy, and I'm going to go to my attribute editor and press M underscore character, and then let's do body, right? So M stands for material, character body is going to be what all of this is. And now you can control the color for this guy, so you can make him whatever you want. Doesn't really matter, but this is where we're going to plug the texture from Substance Painter, right? His skin and his diffuse. So for now, let's go ahead and also let's double click on the body and do a soft edge. I don't want to select all of it because we did some work on the mask where we just defined some of the edges, so I'm not sure what I want to do with the hair. I think with the hair, now one clever way of selecting something is you could just come here and just select just the UVs, and essentially that will give you the selection on the mesh. Very clever way to select stuff. Keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and do a soft edge on this as well, and maybe that doesn't look good. Let's do soft and hard edge and see. I'm kind of liking this better. I like the sharp edges. I think that is really cool. Now as I'm reviewing it, I feel like this guy is a little too crazy for me, so I'm going to do a bevel on that. Just see if I can soften it up a little. And I'm also kind of eyeing this guy here. Alright, I don't want to move it too much because keep in mind we're going to be baking this and we want to make sure that it's still in alignment with our high-res model, right? And I can also see that this edge here is not what I want, so I want that to be soft. As well as this one. If I turn off the wireframe, I can really see which edges are hard and which ones are soft. And that looks really good. Okay, I'm gonna turn this back on. So I think I'm ready for the UVs, right? So let's make sure you save your work. Alright, so let's go ahead and click on our UVs, and now I would like to combine all of this on one UV sheet, right? So to do this, let's leave this as is, and oh, these are the teeth and these are the eyes, right? So trying to figure out what is the most important as far as the resolution goes. I think definitely the skin, the face, and his suit, right? So I'm thinking of this being a 2K map, and which means I can probably dial this down a lot for his teeth. So let's go ahead and put the teeth somewhere here. His mask, can also be much smaller. I'll put that here. Now these, remember these are the side hair, so this is definitely going to be not important solid color, so this could be very small in resolution. Essentially you want to make things that will have more detail larger and things that are not as important smaller. So that's the goal. I'm going to turn off my symmetry, and for the eyes I'm going to scale them down and put them maybe somewhere here. Let's grab the hair, scale this down, and one thing we could do is we could select all of this and do a layout, click on the layout, and that will take all the shells and put them inside the 0 to 1 space, right? So before you do that, save your work, just do Control S, make sure it's saved. And now if you don't like it, we can always undo it and just make sure that we don't have any issues. So I'm gonna say layout. All right, very nice. So this is the result. If you turn your checker map, you can see what that looks like. So I'm gonna go object mode and let's just review this. So I think it looks really nice. I'm reviewing the UVs and everything seems pretty great. All right, let's turn this off. And before we end this lesson, I don't want to texture the entire character. Obviously in this video it's going to be too long. But one thing we could do is let's see what our bake looks like, just so we have some kind of a satisfaction after all this hard work. So I am going to leave the cape. I'm going to press H to unhide it. But I am going to leave the cape in here separate from the character. Remember, I'm not going to have it be part of the same UV sheet. So what I would like to do is just take him and do a file export. All right, and what we need now is the high version of this character with all the detail, right? So we don't yet have that. So let's grab that from ZBrush. And in here, we exported out the low version piece by piece, but now we need the high one. And for the high one, I need to do the opposite. I need to dial up everything that was dialed down. So let's go back to geometry and dial this all the way up. And that's gonna give us, remember, the 13 million. And make sure you save this just in case. And I would save this and then save another version and call it underscore high, because now what we're gonna do is we're gonna delete the subdivision levels and just deal with the high version for the baking, right? So I'm gonna delete the lower. So now there's no subdivision levels. I'm just stuck at 13 million. And I'm gonna do the same thing for the other guys as well. I'm gonna click on my mask and make sure that it's nice and smooth. Right now, if I zoom in, you can see there's actually, you can see that it's kind of low resolution. So I'm gonna press Control D a couple times. I really want this nice and smooth. And I'm gonna go to geometry and delete lower. So again, I'm just keeping the really high one. For the side hair, Control D twice for me. Delete lower. And for the eyes, I'm gonna just do, I'm gonna do it twice as well. Do delete lower. Teeth, I don't need the teeth, so I'm gonna delete them. I'm not sure why I have two of them. I don't need the cape. And I do want the hair to be subdivided, so I'm gonna press Control D. a few times, so I'm at 74,000. I think this is perfect. I'm going to delete lower. And what I need to do now is I need to make sure that all of these are together merged. So for that, I'm going to go to merge and do a merge visible. As soon as I press merge visible, you can see a new subtool was created. If you click on it, you can see that your character is now all merged on one layer. If you zoom out, you can see what it looks like. It looks the same, but now this is just a high one, and it's 13 million, right? So it's high. And this is clearly way too much for Substance Painter to handle, and totally not necessary, right? So what we could do is we can come to our Z plugin and go to Decimation Master, and let's do a pre-process current. So I'm gonna click on that. All right, great. So on my end, this took 2 minutes and 35 seconds. I hope you have a faster machine and yours took less time. But the next step is going to be decimating it, right? So I'm gonna dial this down to 10% and click decimate. And when you click decimate, please keep an eye on the total number of points and the quality of your mesh. So the goal here is, because we're going to be using this for baking, we want it to be super smooth and beautiful and clean. We don't want any edges or low res of any kind, right? So as soon as I press decimate, I just went from 13 million to 1.3 million. And if I look around my character, I'm very satisfied with the quality of the frame. So I actually don't see any low resolution of any kind. If you click on your polyframe, you can see what that looks like, and it's still very dense. And 1.3 million is still, you know, it's pretty high. You can maybe lower this. I'm gonna try to use this for baking and see what happens. So usually I try to be below a million, but I think 1.3 is gonna be okay for Substance Painter. So let's go ahead and export this out. And the other one was called low, so this one is gonna be called game character high. So game character underscore high, and I'm perfectly fine with this being an OBJ file, so I'm gonna say save. All right, great. So now we have a low version of this character from Maya and a high one from ZBrush. So let's go ahead and see if we can bake them both in Substance Painter. All right, so I'm gonna do File, New, and I'm gonna set this to 2K, and I'm not gonna touch anything else and just select my Maya file, the underscore low, and say OK. All right, so here's my character. A couple things I can do right away is I can come here into display settings, and I can change one of the things I like to do personally is just change the environment map to this glazed one. I think it has a little bit better lighting. I like to turn the shadows on kind of low at like 17%, is fine. I also like to turn on my anti-aliasing so the edges are nice and clean. And this should work for now. So let's go ahead and go to bake. Let's do a bake mesh maps, and again let's switch this to 2K for our high. Let's go ahead and click on high definition mesh and click on this button here and navigate over where you have your high saved from ZBrush. So mine is actually called game character underscore high. For the distance, I would like to switch this to 0.3, just because some of my normal detail is kind of intense. It's a little deep, you know? So I'm gonna do anti-aliasing 2, and ambient occlusion, I'm gonna ramp this up a little bit. All right, and let's just click bake and hope for the best. All right, so here's the final result. If I zoom out, I can see that it looks pretty great. The only issue that I see is just on top of his head right there, and we can easily clean this up. Everything else looks really nice. I think I see some issues by the eyes and the hair, and as far as everything else, the detail baked beautifully. So again, you know, if you go to your display settings and turn on your show wireframe, right? Let's turn this to kind of black. For those for the new artists, you know, keep in mind what just happened is you have the low frame, low poly game frame topology, and that high resolution model was baked into the normal map. So that's what this detail is. So the detail is essentially not part of the topology, but it's part of the normal map, which is pretty awesome. So at this point, we can just go ahead and paint our character with beautiful textures, and let's go ahead and do that in our next video. Just to finish this off, to clean this up, what you want to do is if you delete the normal map from the bake, you can see that was the culprit, and you can also delete the ambient occlusion, and you can see that's what's causing it. So let's do Control Z twice. You do want to bring it back, and what we could do is we can create a new fill layer, right? We can say press Alt and click on normal, and if I go to project and go to textures, I can just drag my normal map over the list layer here, and in the texture settings under normal mixing, I can switch it to replace, and now what that does is it puts the normal map up here into the layers instead of using this one, right? Which is cool because if we go to normal, we can right click and do a white mask, and then what we could do is we can turn our symmetry on, make sure it's where our hair is a little off, but that's okay. Maybe I don't want the symmetry on, but I should be able to just paint the white mask in and just delete all of those strange imperfections on the base of the normal map. So just go all the way around and just delete anything that looks kind of wonky, weird. So all of that is nice. Another thing we can do is, so this, we can actually call this normal map. You can call it plus fix, right? Because the mask kind of cleans this up. If you have any other issues that you want to clean up, like the eyes, you can just do that, just clean this up. Now in Maya, you can see that the eyes, we forgot to set the soft edge in Maya, so we need to go back and do that. We can also make our brush smaller and clean all of this if we wanted to. And for that, you could actually turn the symmetry on. All right, if you wanted to, you could clean this up. I'm gonna turn my symmetry on and just make my brush kind of large. I really don't want any normal in this area. So just manually clean this up. You just want to be careful not to delete this whole mask is actually not necessary. So all of that is not, I don't really want normal baking in this. You just want to be careful not to delete like the lines, right? So like you see if I start doing this, it's going to delete that. So I don't want to do that. But everything else I can sort of clean up if I needed to. So you have full control of that. And these remaining strange spots are coming from the ambient occlusion. So let's do the same thing. Let's go ahead and create a new layer, a new fill layer. And I'm actually going to put this one down here, and that's going to be my base, so I can sort of control the color of the base of the character, and you can also control the roughness, right? Let's leave that there. And for the ambient occlusion, I'm going to come up here and create another fill layer, and let's come up here into texture settings, do a plus, and do an ambient occlusion. As soon as you press plus ambient occlusion, you can see that AO material has been added, right? Which means now we can go to ambient occlusion here. We can hold on the Alt key and select just ambient occlusion and drag it from our project on to our character. We can do the same thing. We can right click and do a white mask, and I'm going to turn off the symmetry and just simply delete or clean up all of this stuff here. And if it's not cleaning up, that's because it's still pulling up the ambient occlusion in our thing here. So let's switch this to replace. All right, and now switching it to replace will actually allow us to do a cleaning up of any AO issues that we had, right? So this is how easy it is to clean up both the AO and the normal map if you have issues. You won't always have issues, but sometimes you do. And another thing you could do, another trick, is grabbing this smudge tool, and you can actually smudge some of this, kind of blend in some of the AO stuff. Just a trick, right? You can grab your eraser if you needed to and just clean this up if maybe you deleted too much. So you can, that's the nice thing about using a mask, is that you have full control. You can bring it back, you can erase it, you can draw more on it, and you can just keep going back and forth, whatever makes sense. You can use the smudge tool to kind of blend it back in. All right, and once you do that, you should have a clean, beautiful model, right? And the reason you want it to be perfect is because now as you paint, if your foundational base is clean and beautiful, then your paint is obviously gonna remain, looking like it's high quality, right? So I think this is a great spot to stop this tutorial, and holding down the shift key, you can right click and kind of change your light. You can also come up here and, just for the sake of preview, we can pull up different HDR maps and just see what that looks like in different lighting. I'm actually loving this. This looks really cool. Yeah, and then another thing we could do is we can also turn on our post effects. Let's turn our vignette on so it looks even nicer. That looks really cool. Make sure you save your work. All right, another thing we can do is we can preview what this looks like so far, even before we even do texture in iRay. Why not? Just for fun. Let's click on this button and see what our character looks like. You can change the max time, you know, from seconds to maybe minutes to get more iterations. You can also come up here and change your HDR so you can see what the character looks like in different environments. Again, you can hold on the shift key and right click to rotate the environment and kind of change the lighting. I'm going to go back to my purple lights. And another thing you could do is scroll down here and activate clear color if you don't want to see the actual HDR, right? You can of course control the background. And you can play around, but at this point, let's go ahead and stop here. And in our next lesson, let's go ahead and add some cool textures to this guy so we can move on to the next lesson. After that is going to be rigging the character and of course playing around with the animation. So I hope you learned a lot, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.